Yes, indeed. I am serious. And I'm Stan Hustad, and welcome to What It Takes, a little short speak about that hopefully will be practical, helpful, and most importantly, useful to you. Yes, new graduate, and all of us are graduates. You may just be graduating from a college or a university or a high school or perhaps even a graduate school, but we're all graduating from whatever course we've gone through. Perhaps you've lost your job or you've quit your job. Well, you graduated. You took that course and you finished that course, and now you're going to go and seek another course of work. Perhaps you just simply need to get back into something. So you're graduated into a new sense of possibility. So we're all graduating, and we all have graduated. Throw away your resume. Now, let me tell you the story. One time, a few years ago, just to find out what it was like, because I've been self-employed for a number of years, but I remember what it's like to be unemployed, to be poor and broke. I really do. And so I went through one of these little classes and courses on how to get a job. I mean, how do you go out there and get a job? I was deeply disappointed because what I discovered was that they were teaching the same old stuff that I had been taught many, many years ago. Nothing really had changed. Take a test, find out what you like. Okay, decide the kind of job you want. Put together a resume, learn how to do a cover letter, and then go out and find a way to network and get the word out there and send out your resume. And I walked out of that class rather depressed because I knew that what those dear folks were learning about was terribly and totally out of date. As one person said, sometimes I feel like I'm learning how to get a job from people who never got a job themselves. So what do I do? Well, I'm going to ask you to think differently. And I ask you to begin by throwing away your resume. Now, let me back off now that I've got your attention. And I hope you understand a little bit about what I did. When I said throw away your resume, I got your attention. And that's a vital learning lesson today. There are so many people out applying for jobs. There are so many people saying things. One of the first things we have to learn is to be able to ethically and morally and responsibly, without trying to shock or shudder people, to get their attention. So throw away your resume. And hopefully that perhaps draws you in to say, well, what does he mean by that? Or how can you do that? Now, I want you to know that I understand the reality. That oftentimes what you have to do is, if you want to apply for a job, they say enclose your resume. And so there you do. You have to put that thing together and send it off to them. Perhaps with a cover letter or some other way that positions you. Now, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, if not eventually literally, throw away your resume. Because first of all, it is positioned totally wrong. A resume is just that. Give us a summary of your past experience. You know, where did you go to school? What happened? What kind of jobs have you had in the past? What kind of experiences have you? What kind of honors have you received in the past? And oftentimes, you then actually go and pay a coach to help you put together your resume. And send it off, and hopefully your resume will be picked for an interview, and then out of the interview you will be selected to be one of the finalists. And then maybe you will have that wonderful, wonderful opportunity to hear, we've decided to offer you a position, and they make an offer. Great. If all of that can happen for you, great. But here's the problem. Just as I pointed out, a resume is a summary of what you have done in the past. Now, I'm going to teach you a very snarky but vital word. I remember one of my mentors said that if you want to be effective, eventually you always have to have two words that you put in front of yourself and sometimes in front of others. And here they are. So what? So what? So you graduated from college. By the way, some of the most successful people in the world didn't even go to college. So what? You did this and this and this and this in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So what? There's that old line that financial advisors often use. Remember, past performance does not in any way guarantee future performance. All of that is true. You know, when I am trying to find a colleague or a person to work in my enterprise, you know what? I really don't care what you did for somebody else in the past. And that's what your resume does. You know, I worked for Joe, and this is what I did for Joe, and this is what I perhaps achieved for Joe. So what? Now, I understand the realities of the world, and I understand the incredible truth. Oh, we're looking for someone with experience. Well, I usually don't. There are a lot more things, a lot more important than experience, let me tell you. But that's the world we live in. So right off the bat, I want you to change your mindset and say, I may have to give them a resume, but so what? I want you to understand that you've got to do more than simply put on a piece of paper things you did in the past. It's not good enough. You know what I'm asking? And by the way, many employers confide this to me. In fact, one guy said this to me. He said, you know what? I really don't pay a whole lot of attention to what the HR people tell me. He said, don't tell them. But they bring me these resumes, and then they say, well, this person looks good, and perhaps we should do that. He said, all of the resumes look good. He turned to me and said, have you ever seen a bad resume? No. Everybody puts it together, they profile it. We've discovered that most people in either small or big ways either exaggerate or just straight out lie. He said, they're all good. They're all wonderful. They all have shown me that they are people who are very, very deserving of this position. He said, that's not useful to me. And then he looked me in the eye. I have to know not what they did for them. I have to begin to discover what they can do for me in the future. And that's the big divide. Your resume talks about the past. I, as an employer, or perhaps somebody who wants to bring you into my company or organization, I want to know what you might be able to achieve for me in the future. That is extremely valuable. How can you demonstrate to me that you have more to offer than what was put on a piece of paper? Now, of course, all the career counselors will say, Stan, well, that's what you cover in your cover letter on top of your resume. All that is a little more of a specific pitch about the same thing that sits on the other piece of paper. They taught you wrong. That will not work in the world to come. It may still get you something now, but it will not work in the world to come. So mentally, emotionally, spiritually, throw away your resume. Now, you say, okay, now what should I do? Well, I'm going to encourage you to think and act differently. Now, here's what I would love for you to think about doing. I want you to go out and decide that you are going to pitch yourself with a story card. Now, I want you to understand that people respond to stories more than they do to facts, figures, and statistics. You are walking into a situation and you need to have the best story. So I'm encouraging people to create what I call, and they oftentimes do this, they create a story card. They create a card which in effect helps them tell their story, and then allows that story to be projected into what could be a better future story, both for the person who's seeking the position and for the people who are offering that position. And you have to remember, along with that position title, there is a price tag. Let me give you a way of thinking that'll help you. Hey, let's say you're looking for a job that pays $50,000. All right, $50,000. All right, let's add that up. $50,000 plus the cost of all the benefits. Wow, the health insurance, the retirement, the 401k. Obviously, if you live in many countries, the employer has to pay a part of your Social Security or your pension payments, and that can be rather significant. Then maybe you have, of course, some other benefits, or you have days off, or you have sick leave. There's a very good chance that when you walk in and say, I'm looking for a position that pays $50,000, or whatever amount it is in your particular part of the world, but just let's use the $50,000. You're saying is, buy me for $75,000. I'm on sale for $75,000. Now, wow, that's a lot of money. This person could buy a luxury automobile for $75,000. They might be able to buy a whole lot of things. They could take a great vacation for their entire family. There are a whole lot of things that they could enjoy more than giving that money to you. So how are you going to demonstrate that you are worth that price tag? Again, think about that. You're not there to tell people what you want and what your hopes and dreams are and all of your career aspirations. They may be polite and ask you about that, but deep underneath, the man or woman who has to make a final decision is saying, if I give this person that much money, that's money I don't have. Then what am I getting for paying that price? All right? Now, with that in mind, let me ask you to think about your story card. Now, here's how I learned about this idea. A number of years ago, a friend of mine came to me and said, Stan, I need a job. I said, well, how can I help you? And he said, and don't try and help me with my resume because my resume sucks. It does. I've had some real problems, made a lot of bad choices, and I'm really kind of starting over again. And no matter how I spin it, that resume is not going to work. And that's how I came up with the idea of a story card. And here's what we did. We took a nice piece of cardstock and we put the person's name. Let's just call him Jack. His full name, obviously, a simple contact email. We also designed, of all things, we had a friend who kind of owed us a favor, who actually did a little logo, a personal logo for Jack, kind of a little coat of arms. It was kind of clever about Jack. And here's how it began. My story. My name is Jack, and I am an alcoholic. I am proud to say that I have now been sober for the last 9 years. I have sought to repair and restore all of the relationships that I hurt and the damage that I did during those years of my being an alcoholic, a bad alcoholic. I've made a great deal of progress. I have experienced a very profound transformation in my life, and now I'm seeking to find a way to help other people build a great business. That's how he started. Now we're going to find out that got him a job, and we'll tell you a little bit about how that worked. Now, here's how the story then continues. After you just start that brief paragraph of my story. Now again, this can work for the person who has literally no experience, but you can actually talk in some very good ways. The next part of the story said this: things I have learned from school and experience. Look at things I have learned. Not, okay, I got a degree. Things I have learned from schooling and experience. Even though I did not graduate from the Arizona State University, I learned. In my many years of working for, I learned. Tell people what you learned as part of your story. You see, if you want to earn, you have to learn. What have you learned? By the way, one of the top computer geeks, brilliant young man that I know of who has a very, very profitable business, has not had 1 ounce of computer training formally and officially. But oh, has he learned. He is a genius. But all of his education was experiential and unofficial. But he's brilliant. And he can talk in great detail, though, about what he's learned. Think about that. Now, that's helpful. Now, what are you good at? What are you good at? You know, there's a lot of things that I'm good at. Now, there's a lot of things that I'm not very good at, and there's a lot of things I can't do at all. But I am good at certain things through my many years of experience and learning and doing things. There are things that I would be proud to say I'm very good at. Here's one of the most powerful, I can't tell you the whole story, but it turns out that one man simply decided to make his business different, and he simply, in a very, I think it was 2 sentences, described what he loved and what he did. And then he concluded by a simple statement: and I do it well. And I do it well. I'm good at it. And that's stated with a sense of humility and gratefulness, but full integrity can be very, very powerful. And I do it well. Okay, now you do it well. Next statement. Here's how I can help. Tell me how you can help me. I'm a businessman. I'm a business owner. How can you help me grow my business? How can you be useful? Now, I don't care how smart you are, how cute you are, how good looking you are, what you did in the past. Again, so what? How can you be useful to me starting tomorrow? Now, here's the problem with a resume. I have to guess. I read all that stuff, and now I have to guess. Well, I wonder how they might fit in. Tell me how you could be practical and helpful and useful. You know what the other part of the story is? Has anybody inspired you? I have been inspired by. I'd love to know who has inspired you and in how have they inspired you. That's a point of conversation. And you might even add this. I believe. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about a religious or political or social belief, but there may be things about you and your life and experience that you could just simply say, you know, I believe this. Are there some things about you that without preaching and proselytizing and kind of being a proverbial pain in the you-know-where, you could just simply say, I believe. Because you know what? Belief influences behavior. And I'd like to know some of the things you believe. And I'm not asking you to disclose anything that's illegal. What do you believe? Remember, this is a story card. Now, you see, you've made it a whole lot different. Now, whether you actually can hand out that story card, which we'll talk about, you are ready. Then, at the bottom, you say, with your permission, I would like to audition. Did you get that word? You're not looking for an interview as such. You're looking to audition. Wonderful word. Part of how I point this out is many, many, many years ago, a rather plain-looking girl from Brooklyn was trying to get a job as a singer. They didn't ask for her glamour shot, and they didn't ask for her resume. She got there, and they said to Barbara Streisand, okay, girl, sit on that stool and sing. And all of you are trying to sing your song and show your story. And rather than describing what you do, you want to demonstrate how good you are. Now, I'm going to close with two great stories that will hopefully get you to understand why I want you to throw away your resume. What happened is a young woman came to me. She had known me from some other situations, and her family had known me. And she simply said this to me. She said, Stan, I'm just starting out, you know. And she'd done all the right things. By the way, there's a lot more to do. You know, by the way, if you're going to audition, you better clean up that Facebook account. You better clean up all that social media. Because you know what? You are already auditioning. Everything you've posted online is an audition. You're telling your story, you're showing your stuff. All that stuff on Facebook, all that stuff online is part of your audition. So I oftentimes say you are auditioning whether you know it or not. Okay, she cleaned all that up. It was no real problem. But I said, hey, what's the story? And she said, you know what? It's just a receptionist job, but it's a great company. I know I can do it well, but I do know that there are 3 other ladies and I think another guy who are looking for the job. All of them have far more experience. They're much older than me, and I don't think I have a chance. I said, what do I do? I said, here's an idea. Here's what I want you to do. You obviously are good terms and you know you're being considered. Why don't you call him up and ask if you can audition? I said, well, who's doing the job now? She said, well, they've got a temp worker there until they find somebody. Great! To call him up and simply say, I really would love that role, and you know what? I really would like to demonstrate to you that I can do it. And then she used that word. Could I audition? And he said, audition? She said, well, here, give me a try. Right now, you have a temp worker. You know what? I'll be glad to be your receptionist for 2 weeks. You don't have to pay me. Just let me show you. You can save money on the temp worker. Let me do the job for 2 weeks just like a temp worker. And let me show you what I can do. You know the story. Why not? Save two weeks of a temp worker. She came in, she was a star, she got the job. Unfortunately, she lost that job because she was soon hired to other positions in the company. Yeah, she auditioned. So, I want you to request an audition. By the way, we're going to do a special program on auditioning, and we're going to give you more details about that. But now, we're going to close with this. Remember I told you about the guy who said, I'm an alcoholic. All right, here's what he did. We printed that up very nicely in a little story card, and he got a little coaching on how he should dress. Remember, image is not everything, but it is the first thing. He got costumed, and that's part of the deal. When you audition, you got to be in the right costume. Image, everything. And what he did is he went to a job fair. And it just so happens that he had an interest, and he came across one of the top car dealers in the city where they lived. And he just simply went up, expressed his interest, and he said to the gentleman there, he said, you know, I don't have a very good resume. I'm very clear about that. But I would be grateful, great word, grateful. I would be grateful if I could at least share with you my story card, and perhaps you can recommend what I might do. Did you get that? He's not saying, give me a job. You can recommend what I might do. And the guy picked up the card, started to read it, looked up. And he put it down. He looked at him and said, Jack, I'm George. I'm an alcoholic. And I've been sober for 30 years. And that's why I am now the owner of this very, very successful car dealership. He says, I love your honesty. I love your transparency. And I would love to help you. And he said, I'm going to call the sales manager right now. And I'm going to tell him that you will be contacting him. And I'm telling him that I want him to offer you a position. And we'll see how well you do. There it is. There it was. Now, in a number of ways, he had filled out, there were things he was quite good at. He was relationally very, very strong. He was all that stuff, what he was good at, you know, what he had learned, what he believed. And one of his beliefs is sometimes the best people are on their second chance. Yeah. And that is how the story continues to this day. Storytelling is important. You see now, mentally, emotionally, and if you can, throw away your resume and be prepared to tell and show your story. By the way, your story card is then something you hand out to all your friends. Say, if you know of somebody who would be interested in my story, can you do that? Then you might even have a YouTube video as part of your audition. Oh, there are all kinds of ways that you can begin to position yourself in the marketplace if you throw away your resume. I hope this has been helpful, practical, and useful to you, and that you will now begin to find and graduate to the job you want, and eventually find a way to create that dream job you love. And that'll be one of the things, besides auditioning, that we'll talk about on another WIT Speak About. And now you know a little bit more about living to your fullest and flourishing in the marketplace. Now you know a little bit more about what it takes. As always, peace to you and all the best and blessings to you. I'm Stan, and bye for now.